everybody, I am Romi with The Real Romi. Let me make sure my head is in here. I am at Ashley Kelsch's house. That sounded kind of weird.
Ashley Kelsch.
And then your house. Ashley Kelsch's house. We've got this beautiful tree up. We're in this gorgeous neighborhood here in Austin. Thank you for letting me come in.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
I had Ashley on the EFF IT Madre podcast that I did with my best friend Carla.
Yep.
You came on as a mom, sharing your EFF IT moment.
Mm-hmm.
You were so true to my heart in terms of just being so like open and honest and like raw about your story that when I started The Real Romi, I was like, oh, I have to reach out and have you on to go a little bit deeper into things that we kind of like touched on, but didn't fully dive into because that was more about just like the EFF IT moment. So I reached out to you, asked if I could come into your home and and ask you some really personal questions.
Yeah. No, I did think, I was like, what are we even going to talk about?
Well, I mean, you have a lot to talk about. I mean, for everyone watching, what is it that you do?
I currently, and have for the last probably like 8 years, I write a column about, well, now it's just a very real, honest column about motherhood, womanhood, dating, sex. It's just all the things, but making sense of it in midlife.
Love.
Yeah, so it's
all
called it's called Unfucking Midlife. And then I've worked with clients one-on-one to coach them around their relationships or business and just where they are with their struggles. And more recently, which has been really exciting for me, is I am doing digital marketing for people behind the scenes and helping them with their brands.
Nice.
And developing their voices. And it's kind of cool to be a part of that, but like no one knows.
Yes, yeah.
It's so much fun.
You're doing the creative side of like helping somebody with their identity on like the behind the scenes when you're normally so in front of it, right?
Yeah.
I remember you were doing coaching. I do coaching as well.
Yeah.
And so working with clients, and my main thing is women.
Yeah.
Seems to be a lot of women who have children and are finding their identity. That's what's kind of drawn to me. That's kind of been my calling thus far, is just to kind of like help women step into who they want to be and shed who they are trying to let go of, right? And creating spaces. And so I think I just really felt drawn to like your content and like your stories that you're sharing. You are pretty unfiltered, right? In terms of not holding back. At least you never know, because we share what we want to share.
Right.
So even for me, like I share a lot, but there is so much I do not share.
That resonates with me.
Okay.
I think people do have this impression that like I'm willing to just put anything out there or that I have.
Yep.
And it's actually, there's still quite a bit.
Same.
I will clarify, it's been in the more recent years that now I get to a place where I've processed a lot of the feelings before I put them out there.
Yes.
There was certainly a time where
it
was like, I'm in the middle of it and I'm going to talk about it. And I was like processing in public, and that has not felt so great in the aftermath.
Yes.
Yeah. So I did a lot of pulling back, especially this last year on social media. I was like, oh, the vulnerability hangovers were
they're hard.
Real.
Yeah.
And I think some of that too has been influenced through my sobriety of it was like, it just didn't align.
Same.
And now, but to your point, like working with other people and what they see in your voice or what they're hearing, is that I have been able to put out there fairly honestly things that have gone on. And I've been sort of in the public with my store, and I was talking, I was selling lingerie and sexual wellness objects. So like that just put me in a position for people to assume this is a safe place. I can trust her and I can talk to her about all of these very intimate conversations around my sex life and my dating life and my love life. And so that was a very natural opening for me in coaching where women were like, how do you do this?
When you put yourself out there in like a vulnerable place, it does open up people to want to like talk to you. I did The Real L Word. I did reality television for 4 years, 3 seasons. It was a very sexual show. It was about my identity, about my sexuality. And so by being so publicly out there with the reality show, it opened me up kind of to being this like very open person.
Yeah.
And I had to learn. I was 30. I'm going to be 43, right? So it's been a long time, but I had to learn over the years, like you, kind of that hangover of like too much, Romi.
Yeah.
It's too, there still has to be a part that's like yours, and work through it before you fully.
I think it gets a little confusing because on one hand, when I think some people genuinely are like, thank you so much for sharing
100%.
that part of yourself that speaks to me, and I feel more seen or understood seeing you come out and be this way.
Yes.
And then I think there's a lot of other people who are like, yes, more of that, because they're really just enjoying the drama or the aftermath of what's happening to you.
Yes.
And that doesn't feel good.
It doesn't. There's a mix.
Very big distinction there that I had to learn from, because I've had people encourage me, like, put yourself out there, keep talking, keep doing it. And then you do it and you're like, this doesn't feel right for me. And then later you're like, oh my God, no, what am I doing?
So when I was trying to like kind of rebrand myself and come back out in the public with like more of me after being a mom, right? After being out of the spotlight for a while, I remember a friend who's in PR in LA was like, the reason people loved you, Romi, was because you were so authentic and you shared so much, right? And she's like, you need to do that again for people to get to know you. And I was like kind of terrified.
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
Yeah.
Because I understand that they relate. And so that draws people in because it's relatable and it's honest, but also it didn't feel good at the end of all of that. Right. So when I reapproached it this time, it has been like, and in my sobriety, because I've been sober now like over a year, it's been different in how I share.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, so much has changed since you were originally doing that craze with social media, and
so different. We didn't even have Instagram when I did it.
And for me, like I do not have the constitution to put myself out there online in a way that I think is, you kind of have to in this day and age, like for things, to become like viral or to make it big, like you have to be prepared to, like, you're going to get some really great commentary
and you're going to get
equally as much criticism. And one person comments negative on my thing and I'm like, what's happening? Why is this happening?
It's
like,
hard. I know. And then you're like, oh, I shouldn't do this. Like I'm being seen the wrong way. But then you get the people that do say, oh my gosh, that helped me. It got me here. You hit me here and it inspired me to do this. And I'm like, okay, remember that's why you're doing it, right? Yeah. Remember that your story is helping somebody who doesn't have that voice or needs to hear that voice or needs to hear that story. So don't let the ones that are like, ripping you apart take away from those gifts that we have to speak or write,
100%. Yeah. And it is just kind of understanding, like those thoughts are already out there. And I think like there's times when I'm like, I totally hear you and I'm okay with hearing you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hit. Right. And then there's some things where it's like, that's still kind of raw.
I mean, I think this is what we're going to jump into with you, and I appreciate it. I have been known, unfortunately, I'll say that, for my love life. That is how I was put out into the public eye through a television show, and who I dated, what sex I dated, who I married, what I was into. So that became my identity, right? I do identity coaching. That's how I work with people who are exploring their sexuality, right? Who are trying to figure out who they are, because one of the things about me, and I think you can like relate to some of this, is just that I've been open about my exploring and my journey and my ups and my downs, and when I failed and when that didn't feel right, but I tried it and it didn't work. I've been married 3 times, like I've been engaged twice in the last year. I've been very open about these things.
Yeah.
And people have a really hard time wrapping their head around this.
Yeah.
And I'm not like in a place of shame around any of it. And I think that's also hard for people to understand.
Yeah.
But it's been my journey, right? And so over the last year, like through my sobriety, through my engagements, through just motherhood, right? My 40s, I've just experienced a lot in the dating world. And I had some things that like really started to come up that I was like curious about. So I've always had a really hard time with my relationship with men. That's from my father, to part of my bisexuality, to half the reason I was with women, right? It was just a lot of unhealed male issues for me that I've really had to tap into and explore over the last few years within getting older, therapy, all the things, right?
Yeah.
But kind of putting myself back out there in the world, I've come across exploring open relationships. I had like a woman who wrote this book called More, Molly, on
I interviewed her.
on our podcast. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Her book is amazing.
It's incredible.
She really opened my mind up to just this whole idea, right? My ex-fiance Jenny and I had opened up our relationship when we were talking about getting married. You brought up when we had you on the podcast that you had an affair. And I over my recent kind of putting myself out there, it has seemed to be a very common thing that people are having affairs. Like we had just said before this, that women are having affairs, men are having affairs, families, kids, or open relationships. So I just wanted to dive in with you about, first, if you're open to sharing any part of that journey for you, and then just kind of like, what do you think is going on?
Well, I think
in terms of commitments.
Yeah. Well, I think that affairs and like that's always been happening.
Right. Agree.
Yeah.
Since the beginning of time.
The beginning of time.
Yes.
And I think it's a different experience for men than it is for women if you're having an affair.
Tell me about that.
I feel that it's more socially acceptable for men. I think there's more of a stigma around women who do.
Yes.
And that is probably, it's hard to explain it because unless you've, I can understand why people feel the way they do about affairs. And in my life today, I would definitely not have an affair.
Okay.
Yeah. There's just because of the damage that it caused other people.
Explain that a little bit.
So I'll just start with, it happened in 2012. Well, but wait, scratch that. Okay. Back it up even more. I was married in 2010 and then in 2011. And I had been wanting to get a divorce, even though we'd only been married a year. We were together for a total of 6, I believe. Okay. And before we got married, I was unraveling. And I remember trying to voice that, that this isn't working. And, I wonder today, like, was I clear about that? Was I really clear? But that doesn't matter. Aside from that, I had an affair and I managed to end my marriage before anything was found out.
You ended the marriage before he found out that you had an affair.
Yeah, because I was like, I cannot believe I've done this thing and what I'm doing. And I was just ridden with guilt.
How did you, this is my question, I'm curious, like how did you compartmentalize and live these 2 lives?
Very recklessly, very emotionally, anxiously is what I'll say.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't something that I was able to do. And that's the thing is, like, people have, like I said, people are having affairs all the time.
Well, people do it for a very long time too. They have other families.
Yeah, and some people are very comfortable with
it.
Yes. And and I again, going back to the Constitution for things, like that's not built into my wiring. Like same. I don't judge anyone who does it. No. I just, for me, like I said, the damage it caused others. So what was the question again? It was,
how did you compartmentalize that?
Right. Yeah, no, you're just trying to, like, I was going to work and the thing happened and it was happening and it was like, and then
your
I get
nervous
home
system,
and I'm like,
right?
Yeah. And I think probably I was drinking.
Okay. I was going to ask you if you were sober through this.
And I was not sober. There was a lot of drinking. There was a lot of drama with girlfriends. There was zero, like I said, I was trying to communicate to my husband that I was unhappy. But like I said, I really wonder how clear I was about that.
Did he know?
He was very suspicious. And I had like so many like other random things happening that looked very sus, to be clear. Because I was like just kind of feeding off this frenzy of like, now I would say trying to wreck my fucking marriage and life.
You were.
Yeah.
So do you think for you, and for some people I do think that is true, is that instead of like having maybe the courage to just end something, you almost self-destruct, right?
I didn't have
behave in a way that is going to end it.
Yeah.
Without being aware that you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't have the tools or the emotional maturity or the understanding of what I was doing.
To communicate.
Yeah. And also just what had led up to that point. I mean, this was a man that it's kind of hard for me to fathom all these years later that I ever caused him that kind of pain. I was so in love with him. And
the man that you were married to.
Yeah, and he was my best friend, and I couldn't imagine a life without him. So then you fast forward years later, and it's become that, which to me is almost just as unfathomable. Where you're like, how could I have done this to somebody that like?
Do you regret it?
I think I've gone through phases of regret. It's been 12 years
since.
Yeah.
Okay.
So regret was definitely a part of it. I mean, I carried the weight of that for at least 5 years before I like started to forgive myself. Like it was very heavy for me to live with, but it also like there were many moving parts to it. It happened And like I said, I came home from it and was like, oh my God, it was the thing that gave me the courage to say, like, this marriage is over and you need to leave.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, it
did you end up having a relationship with the person you had an affair with?
Mm-mm.
That's what I'm curious about, because I feel like so often the people that people have an affair with,
Mm-hmm.
who they make up in their mind to be almost worthy of destroying a marriage or a relationship, don't end up normally being the person you end up being with.
Yeah.
Why?
It's a good question. I think we were both in places of, I can't speak on behalf of that person, actually. I just know that for me, it was probably a very subconscious, like, wrecking. It was a wrecking of my life.
And why?
I think that is more probably a deeper wounding, like pattern stuff. Mm-hmm. Which I say that because over the years I've witnessed myself so lost for love. Mm-hmm. And wanting to, looking for it literally, but like in all the wrong places. Was like quick to be like, oh, you're like, what? Yeah. Like, you understand, you're see paying me? Attention. Yes, you're like making me feel these things that I haven't felt. And it's manufactured. It was very easy. I'll just say I was a very easy target. For girl, same. It was like, you say the right things, see me in the right way, and the little girl in me that, like, I'm like, oh my God, you love me, you want to choose me. Yes. And so that's so real. It like hits my heartstring because it's so real. And this is where, like, some of the, like, judgment, right, around doing these things or having affairs, it's like it's so much deeper. Yeah. And it's really, when we talk about, like, being sober and not, like, using substances, what really for me it's been about emotional sobriety. Yeah. Right. Like, and I didn't really go into quitting drinking thinking anything about that until I went years without drinking. And I was like, why am I still emotionally unstable and chaotic? And there's so much drama. And it's just, I'm like a live wire in water. Like, what the fuck? I thought that was the substances. It's not. Right. And it's not. And so, I have a program that I work, and it's worked wonders. And it's been like, oh, emotional sobriety. So, like, this there's a saying that I refer to often, which is, if it's not a man, it's a martini. If it's not a martini, it's a MasterCard. If it's not a MasterCard, it's a muffin. Like, just insatiable need to fill these holes up for, like, anything that will make me feel something, like good, love, full, right? And so it's just like hitting that like a whack-a-mole. I saw a thing this morning, and I sent it to one of my clients who's struggling with addiction with alcohol. And it was like, the addiction isn't like the drug or the liquor. The addiction it's like something that you're checking out from, right? The addiction is what you're escaping, and how you're escaping it, right? And what you're using to escape from it. And it's like, once I got sober again, my sobriety journey's been on and off for years, currently in it, and grateful to be in it. But, like, once I do that, it is that emotional sobriety that you're talking about, that it's not, oh, once I remove alcohol, everything's going to be okay. Yeah. I'm not going to act reckless. Right. No, it's crazy. But I was like, oh my God, I do all the same shit. Sober. Right. And then you get sober and you're like, oh, you're kind of a mess. Yeah, like, and I don't have this excuse of, like, oh, I was drunk when I did that. I was like, oh no, now you just have to, like, own the fact that you're, like, an asshole sometimes, and still doing crazy shit. But so in terms of, like, a woman, like, and I want to just get back to what you said, in terms of it being more socially acceptable for, like, men cheat. We know that men have always cheated. They have other affairs. They have other families. And, like, it's totally normal, right? Why aren't we talking, and why aren't more women speaking up about having affairs or doing these things? And why do you think, like, if a man hears a woman say this, it just feels so much more like we're so scandalous? It is like a scarlet letter. But it's because there's this collective belief, right? So it's like a collective wounding, if you will. Like, right. So even there's no safe place really for a woman to be able to talk about it, because it's for other women, it's very threatening. If you're a woman who's had an affair, that's very threatening. And we're talking about sexuality too in that. And it's like, I think part of that was for me, like, when I did that and it was found out, if it had just been, like, isolated amongst, like, him and his partner and me and my partner, and that was it, that would have been one thing. But unfortunately, did he have a partner? Yeah. Okay, so you were both having an affair. Yeah. Okay. And so unfortunately, a family member of my ex-husband found out about it, and socially blasted me on like Twitter and other things in my business. And so then it became public and on a very small scale. This is a very small pond
but
here,
still, it's your world. It's your world and your life.
It was something to this day, like I remember exactly where I was and what that felt like as I was getting text messages from other people that were like, hey, I don't know if you know. So it was like my business was under threat. I was under threat. And then that makes you an immediate threat in whatever community you're in. And so, and at first I would have thought like, oh, anyone who has an affair is going to deal with that. But I've witnessed other people not phased,
going through that,
not going through it, and people know, and they still retain respect from, or maybe they demand it. Again, I think it's a personality thing. In addition to, it is a very different thing for men and women.
Do you feel like, being an attractive woman, right? You're an attractive, sexy woman. You had an affair. Do you feel like women treated you different after this, or were they threatened by you? Did they look at you in a way that is like, stay away from my man, stay away from my family?
Well, I think that was already there, and then this just gave that knew it, and you kind of miss the. And today is great because I think there are more conversations like this and a better understanding of like affairs don't happen just because you like to fuck around and fuck.
Thank you.
Like we were talking about, it's like a much deeper, like psychological, emotional wounding of like you're looking for something that's because you're hurting. Mm-hmm. And so with that understanding now, I think there is a bit of a difference, but there's still a lot of judgment. Yeah.
I have a friend who they had an affair. He was married and they had kids coming, or he had kids coming. They had an affair. They ended up falling in love, and they've been together since. And they're like each other's soulmates.
Yeah,
it's kind of amazing to see. It's hard because you want to always assume like, oh, we have an affair, and then it ends and it blows up everyone's family, and then you see people like them, and you're like, they were like meant to be together.
Yeah,
there shouldn't be regret in it because they knew, and they're like each other's soulmates.
Yeah.
So like there's
I
both,
mean, that
it happens.
It happens. Like I said, for me, people can do whatever they
want.
The part for me was, yes, like, even though I think I was trying to say I'm unhappy, it wasn't coming out right. And so I just did all these other things. And that wasn't the solution, obviously. So there is like I wouldn't do that today. I would have that very, very difficult
hard conversation. Okay, so that's where I'm at in my life, and that's what I want to talk about is Jenny, my ex, who I live with, right, and the people that I've been dating or talking to over the last like whatever. I'm like brutally honest right now. I'm in a season of just like, you're not going to like the way this sounds. This isn't going to land right, but like I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
So this is what it looks like to date me. This is what it looks like to want to marry me. This is what it looks like. Jenny and I established really hard conversations that she didn't want to hear when we got engaged and when we started our relationship. We've been friends for 17 years. I will want men. I will like men. That's going to be a part of me. I don't think I can give that up. So if we get married, I know that this is a part of me, right? Those are hard conversations that have to happen, right? Or I'm going to hurt you. And I know that. So I'm just going to like put it out there before we get into things, and whether people can understand that or not, fine. Her and I have a beautiful friendship now. Fast forward, we're not engaged.
Yeah.
We live together, but we have had really hard conversations, that we needed to have like real life, not avoiding, right? Do you think if couples, here's where I'm at. Like, do you think if couples had these really, or were encouraged to have these really hard conversations, more of like, maybe we need to open it up right now. Maybe we need to say, I'm not getting my needs met. Maybe we could marriages have more of a shot? Like, what is, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is your idea around like, people just aren't talking. And a lot of the people I work with, they're not communicating with their partners.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why the divorce rate is so high and affairs are constantly happening because
no one's talking.
Nobody's talking. And marriage, the institution of it is very dated.
So dated.
And again, today there are conversations are happening in a way that couples before us didn't have. So I think that there is a shift happening. However, I think Western culture set up for monogamy is at this, the way it's set up is somewhat for disaster.
Agree.
And if you're not having this conversation, like, it's human nature that you're
100%.
going to be attracted to other people. I kind of joke about it, but I think it's not really a joke, which is, instead, like, have those post-nup conversations.
Yeah.
Like, instead of a prenup,
Yeah.
a post-nup. Like,
Yeah.
if this were to go wrong, but also, like, hey, if we're going to be together, like, if we're going to spend our rest of our lives together, like, let's have the conversation of, like, what if,
yeah,
like, how are we going to approach the day where, like, maybe we're not sexually attracted in the same way?
Yes. Yes.
What would that look like? And that's something I talked to Molly, in that conversation, because it is something that in my mind I'm not there today, but there is a part of it. It's like, I want to break down some of those systems that are set in place in my mind around monogamy, because there's so much proof and evidence out there that, like, that's what ends up happening. And if you want a life partner, that's a very different thing. A life partner, right?
Yes.
And straight people,
yes.
straight heterosexual, that's the same, but cis people, like, they really don't have those kind of conversations that are open around their sexuality, because there's a lot of fear and shame, especially like, again, going back to women, there's shame around sexuality.
Yes. And we're sexual beings. We are just like men in terms of having seasons of, like, as I've gotten older, you know what I mean?
And actually, as we get older, our sex drive increases.
Mine has been insane in my, like, over the last few years. I'm like, I don't even feel like the same.
Well, your body,
person.
I know the body. I'm just like, oh, that makes so much sense in my late 30s and 40s, where it was like, it's your body's last ditch effort to get pregnant.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So it's like,
that makes sense.
Go time.
I hit 40 and, like, I experienced something very different in myself with my sexuality. Right. And I'm so glad you're saying this. And I feel like, as a country right now, not to get political, but, you know, and I am somebody of faith, but that we are trying to put everyone back, right, to this very old school way of, like, family and life and all this stuff. And then you also feel this fight of people trying to expand and kind of break the way that marriage looks and the way relationships look, or the way that your home looks. Like, we were talking about even just, like, families and how families look these days. There's this, like, fight to hold the old structure that isn't working, right? And break free and evolve into, you know, the real authentic parts of what humans are.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's really fascinating, because it does come down to, like, the couple and being able to have those conversations and, you know, being able to risk losing some things to save those
based on those conversations.
Yeah. And, you know, for me, like, there's a very, like I said, when I talk about my emotional and my nervous system and my constitution, it's like, there's a bandwidth there. And I'm very clear on the capacity of what I have in bandwidth and what I don't.
Yeah.
And so having multiple relationships, I'm maxed out already with 2 young adult kids, an ex who co-parents with me, a boyfriend. Like, that is, like, and then work. Yeah. And then there's time for self, right? And so friends. But, like, I'm good.
I know it's a lot.
So to add for me, because, like, in the romantic part of everything, it's like, there's so much going on for me there emotionally, the work that I'm doing on myself to be able to be a good partner to somebody and meet them where they are, and move through some of these things within myself. There's just no way that I could do that with multiple people at one time. Yeah. Like, so my partner, but I consciously went into that because I dated for 10 years, and towards the last 5 was very much like, I don't want to be in a relationship. And looking back, and I was like, oh, this dating is basically, you're living a poly, you know, life. So I took the tools, or the concepts and the mindset from that and applied it to my dating life. So I was very open with people that this is not I'm not looking for anything serious. Yes. If we have feelings, we need to talk about that. Safety, sexual, like, I'm responsible for my body, and you're, I'm not going to just, you're not sleeping with anyone else. Okay. Right. None of that. Yeah. Like, I really just took all of that and applied it to my dating life. Yeah. And had a very amazing, like, it was a great time. Yeah. But it was still, like, a lot of drama, like, managing people, even with, like, all of that up front.
Well, it is, because it's also, my hand, sorry. It's also, like, the communication part of it is a lot of energy. Yeah. Having open, honest conversations with people is a lot of energy. Yeah. And it's a lot of vulnerability for them to receive, for you to communicate. So, like, even for me, like you said, I can totally connect to that with all the self-work I'm doing, right? Then working with my clients, right? Then raising a daughter, living with my best friend in our relationship and our emotions, right? Co-parenting with her dad. And, you know, on a daily basis, we're managing multiple relationships. So then to like open it up to like romantic partners, we only have so much like space.
And I had to be like really honest with myself. And I think some people are better at managing other, you know, lots of things than others. And there was another part where when I decided consciously, I was like, you know what, I am ready to dive in to a relationship with one person, because there's a depth there that I knew that if I went, I would reach points within myself that I would like push up against some stuff within me that I hadn't, because that's another thing about, you know, when I'm just dibbling and dabbling, if you will, I don't go that deep. It's very arm's length, and there's a lot of boundaries. So it's like, oh, this, never mind.
I haven't gone where you're talking about you have been. When you say that, it makes me feel something, because I'm like, I know I haven't been there. You know, that's a scary space for me.
In the dating one
where you just really go there and face your stuff with one person.
That's
scary to me.
Like how difficult. And in something that's been so great and is so aligned, and there have been parts of me that have just been like completely lit up and activated, and I don't take a lot of those things to my partner, because I'm very aware that this is stuff within me, and like I'll just give you like an idea of what I'm talking about. Like there's times where I'm like, I just need to be alone. Everyone needs to be out. This is too much. I just can't. I don't want to. I'm better alone. Away from everybody. But that's like a default belief that I go to from like, that stems way back to childhood of not having certain needs met, right? And I'm like, oh, this person's not even. It like literally has nothing to do with this person. But it's stuff that I just don't know is there. And I think it's just like if you were to have a psychedelic journey, like you start revealing things to yourself that you have space to and time to, because I'm not distracted by a lot of things.
I mean, it's a weird space to not be distracted by a lot and have to sit with yourself, right? And sit with your truth, right? And not numb it out. I mean, I think for me, drinking was that. I drank my whole life, right? Because there was a lot there I was trying to not feel, right?
You know, going back to that part about like with the affair and how it's had different phases, and then also just being out in the public. Last year, somebody on my Instagram commented multiple times about me having an affair and being, they just said
they don't forget.
No, they don't. And I was like, it's been 12 years.
Girl,
how's it still coming back around? Like, but it was really great for me to have that happen, because it did bring up stuff in me that I didn't realize that that was buried a few layers below the surface. And that was like this, just that I wasn't proud of some of the things I'd done. Right. And I was disappointed. And so it was an invitation to go to that painful part. And so I was just like, wow, I wouldn't have thought that before about something like that. But I was like really grateful that person said and did what they did, because I was able to see like, oh, you still have a little residual stuff there to work through. And I had the time and space in life because because I've just cleared out a lot of things. And it was like, oh, wow, after all this time.
It's funny because right now I'm writing my book. That was like a bucket list of mine, right? To finally just write it. And it's so therapeutic, as you know, like just to write, right? So it will be published. I'm going to put that out there. It will be published. It will be out there. But just to finally actually write it out, which I never had done until this last year. And I was rewriting some of my chapters of the show and the stuff that I did publicly. And in that time, you just said that I had this like, I don't give a fuck, and I'm loud, and I'm crazy, and I do these things kind of attitude to justify my unhealed character, right? Like out there in the world. And as I'm going back and rewriting in such a different time in my life, I am like heartbroken for me. Because I'm just writing her, and I'm like, this is so sad. You think you're like in this like powerful space of like owning your body and you're so broken. And it's weird to reflect back on things and then relook at them in different ways and feel them. And then understand different parts of them. I'm not proud of those things that I did, right? Like
I can understand
it differently.
And I like fully resonate with that as well. Like, it's very clear to me today why she had, when I had the affair, she did that. I get it. And the things that I did after as well. Like, it's like, just so much need and pain.
Do you think that, and I don't care how you answer this, but do you think you would ever have one again?
No.
Okay.
No, because, I think that part of it, like having to reface this thing, and in my recovery, like honesty, rigorous honesty to the best of my ability has been like at the forefront now. And that's really fucking hard. And I've witnessed, I was just like, man, I have been a lie and a cheat and a stealer since I was little.
Yeah.
Since I was little.
To yourself even.
Yeah, but it started out with like candy, right? From a convenience store.
Right.
And then later it's like, you're a man. And I'm
right.
Like, so
yeah, it
sorry.
starts so small.
I know. And I was like, oh my God.
I stole candy at 5 and then I stole your husband.
I know. I was like, wow, that was like, that escalated like crazy. But I see how it happened, you know, and as a child who like, wasn't being taken care of, like you lie and you cheat and you steal because you're hungry, right? And you need a roof over your head and you don't have anyone doing that. So it evolves when it's not tended to. And
everything though, as a kid, and I think as parents, we see that, right? As we're like parenting our children too, it's like a lesson, because I look back and I think, didn't have like the father figure, didn't see the family, didn't see the dad, didn't have these things, grew up with 2 moms, like lesbians, right? Then I go into my life and I'm seeking this attention from men. So I'd seek it sexually. Yeah. Then realize I'm not getting it, right? And I settle with like what? It's like all the things that came from being a little girl and what I saw. Yeah. Like it starts really young.
It starts young.
And then you see it kind of like develop.
Yeah.
These patterns and these, and unhealthy and how they play out.
Yeah. So another big, the split in the road was when I had an opportunity to have a conversation with my kids about it. And I call it an opportunity today.
Thank you for bringing this part up.
It was just like, holy fuck. If I had, it was again around 5 years later, and it was great how all of that was coming to a head at the same time, because I was forgiving myself. And then that was like, oh, amazing. They now know. One of them heard me talking about it, and another had something going on in their life where I was like, they need this piece of information to make sense of part of their childhood that I 100% am partly responsible for. And owning that that was a harder conversation than probably telling this person, like, I don't want to be married, and if I stay with you, I'm going to have an affair. Yeah. Like, I was so scared to have that conversation. But then when it was time to talk to my children, it was like,
it like makes me want to cry, because, and I want you to go into this, but my mother hasn't, I love her to pieces, but never been able to hold space to talk about the things that would happen in our childhood in an honest way. And it is very hard to grow up without a real conversation in your home about the things that we're all going through to this day. Yeah. So you having that and giving space for your kids to like hold an honest conversation about the reality of like everyone's world, because it affected everybody.
It did. And for me, that was a really big pivotal point in forgiving my parents on some things, because I suddenly had this awareness around, when your children and your caregivers, they are responsible for your well-being 100%. There's no excuses for that. But I think it's easy for us to forget that, like, they also were going through whatever they were going through. And I look back at I had mine when I was 21. I was 20 when my son was born.
So we said my mom was 20 when she had me.
So like, in some ways you're like, oh fuck, they've been raised with a child. Yeah. Like, we look at pictures of me holding my babies. It's like a baby holding a baby. And so
I was raised with my mom.
Yeah. So they've gone through all this with me, and whatever drama and life and stuff I was going through. And it was like, oh God, my parents too. Like, of course, like, they were trying to make ends meet, and they were trying to like save their marriage, and they're trying to manage whatever substance shit they had going on, and people and family, all this stuff. And like, you get sort of lost in the way there. And, but I wanted to have a different conversation with my kids, because mine was, when you're old enough to understand, we'll talk about this. And right. Still,
Mine was like, we just don't, it didn't happen.
You're too young to understand, maybe another time. Yeah. And then there was a lot of misinformation around, like, my mom was an addict and mentally ill, and we didn't really know that. So there was your mom likes to party, and she's irresponsible. And so I grew up thinking like that. And then later in life, you're like, no,
she wasn't well.
She was very unwell. And so I wanted to be able to have these conversations with my kids. And
how did they receive it? What did that look like?
Well, with my son, that was the one where I was like, oh wow, he needs this piece of information to make sense of why my ex-husband left. And I need, I have a big part in that. So, and why that's happening. And he listened, and I said, well, is there anything else you want to know?
Yeah.
And he said, I want to thank you for telling me. I think he was 16 or 17. And he's like, and I'll think about that. If there's anything else, I will come and ask you. But for now, I think I'm okay. And I said, and that's when it occurred to me, and this still like is very tender. If I had known the pain or the disruption it would have caused my kids in life, I never
would have.
And there was no awareness around that either. I was just so in my world and my own, past patterns stuff and trying to find happiness and love in places the wrong way. Yeah. And I just had no concept of like how this would affect them when every other decision in my life has been about them and what's best for them, from the men I've married.
Oh, I feel that, yeah.
To the work that I've done. And so that was just kind of this like total paradigm shift for me. It was like, oh my God, like, yeah, that's crazy, because I've led with that. But like this stuff is so buried, like the subconscious shadowy stuff that's driving this is like so powerful that it even like overrode like the love for my your children, kids, right? But I'm really lucky. My kids they just have so much grace for me. I've been really fortunate. They both have just been like, we get it. Yeah. No, we understand. And yeah.
I mean, do you think that there's something that like in our kids kind of understanding our truth and the reality that we are human, going through our own human experience, even though we are parents, right? We are still like in our day-to-day lives. So I guess there's a responsibility as parents to our children, right? Yeah. That we are supposed to hold and live up to. But at the same time, I mean, we're still learning every day and we're still on our journey, right? Yeah. So do you think that there is so much to be said for our kids actually being able to like understand that, as opposed to trying to just be these perfect parents? What's your idea like on that, on just being authentically like?
I think it's case by case. Okay. Right. And what do you mean authentically? Just being yourself and
like letting your kids be involved in your life on that level. I think a lot of parents hold these things back from their kids. They don't, to protect them. Yeah. Is it more beneficial maybe to like actually let them in like you did?
I think it's questionable. Like if your kids kind of know, or, and it's hard to say. Cause like, for me, it was very clear that this person, this child of mine, in order for him to make sense of what's happened in his childhood and it's shaping him as a man in the world. Yes. I have to deliver this piece. It's like a part of the puzzle. And I felt like there was no question, even though it was difficult. It was like, this is the truth. Yeah. That has to be shared.
And what about your daughter?
She had actually overheard me having a conversation about it, and was very much the same as him, with an understanding. Again, I don't even understand how that's been possible. It's like amazing. Yeah. But that is not the case for everyone. And yes. And we're not necessarily supposed to tell if a truth is going to affect others and cause harm.
We don't need to.
You don't air that. Yeah. Don't air that. But for me, this was like the right thing to do.
This wasn't to hurt them. This was to help them.
Yeah. Okay. But there's there's people out there that I wouldn't just call up and be like, hey, you should know the truth. This thing happened. And
that's a lot of healing right there. Lives, yeah. I used to feel like if I didn't say the truth about everything, that I was like, it was a selfish thing. I was struggling.
Yeah. No, we think like we can feel comfortable.
For me to feel better, I need to tell everybody everything.
Yeah. No, it's like, is this really going to serve?
Exactly. And I had to learn that. And that's been really hard. That like, yes, I am very open and honest, and that is my nature. But like, how much am I doing this for like my own selfish breath? Yeah. And how much am I just hurting people? Yeah. Right. And where does that like, where do you figure that out, and how you figure that out? It's difficult.
It is.
And
it's difficult to sit.
Yeah. It's so hard.
Because I think, like I said, like some of that stuff, that processing I've been doing on my own with some things that like things from like high school that had come back up, and you're like, oh my God,
Same.
And I've got to move through that on my own. There's no one I can tell that's going to bring relief to that.
And so
release.
My like need for love, whether it be man or woman, whatever I've been seeking my entire life, is that right there what you said. When you said that, that's the first thing I thought of, is like, somebody just make me feel better, like make me feel loved. Like I've done all these things, I've been this person, like who is going to just like hold space to just love me and make it all feel better. And it's been in the healing journey recently that like I've had to sit with myself, and there hasn't been anybody that's been able to take that pain away.
Yeah. You know, that just reminded me, I remember when I first started dating after my divorce, it was almost as if I showed up with like a resume of like, I've had 2 divorces. Last one I had an affair.
Right,
like,
right.
All the things.
Me. Do you love me?
Are you ready to go now?
Yeah.
You know. And,
that's oh God, I feel that hits me.
Yeah, and now it's like something that I don't even. I hadn't thought about it in so long, and that person just aired it out in and I was like, oh, okay. And there's some stuff there, but
yes,
I mean, there are some things that I bring up if they seem
necessary,
serve the relationship, but I don't identify with that part of my life anymore. Like, I don't know. I quit smoking in like 1999, like going into 2000. I was like, I'm done. And in 2020, my son came to me, and it was Christmas or New Year's or something. He's like, I just want you to know I'm going to quit smoking. And I was like, first of all, I didn't even know you were smoking. Okay. What is going on?
First, let's talk about that.
And then I was like, oh my God, I used to be a smoker.
Yeah.
It's been 20 years.
Same. I forget.
Completely forgot.
Yeah.
I don't celebrate the timelines of it. It's like something I can't, like, I don't identify with it at all. And a lot of that behavior in my past marriage and my affair, like I just don't identify with that part at all. It's like that.
I love that you're bringing this up. I want to ask you this because I have a big thing around identity. I do a lot of work with it. I love Joe Dispenza, right?
Yeah,
so like he's my, that's my that book saved my life.
Yeah, it's great.
Saved my life. Learning to be able to break the habit of being myself and learning to be able to step into like who I want to be and leave it's a game changer.
Yeah.
So when you say that and it's like your identity, you don't identify that anymore. Do you identify as a cheater? Is that a part of your identity? No. See, that's what I love.
Yeah. There's just
love that.
When you ask would I do it again? It's like, no. Like it's not even in the same way that I don't think about drinking at all.
Right.
Like it just, that wouldn't be my go-to right now.
So for somebody like watching too, when you would do work with people and like you get this, if you walk around still being like, I'm a cheater, I have affairs, I'm this person.
Yeah.
You're walking around in that identity. And you're making that like.
Yeah. So a lot of the coaching work similar to Joe Dispenza is like your thoughts are creating your reality, right? Like your brain doesn't know the difference.
Your personality shapes your reality.
Yeah.
Yes.
And your thoughts are going to, they fuel your emotions, which drive your actions and create your reality. So like, if that is those are the, for a long time I carried around.
That's what I'm saying. You're thinking that. Yeah. So that's what you.
And then you're choosing relationships that continue
based on that.
Yeah.
That's who you identify as.
Correct. And it does take, like, I think there's a part of it for a while that's like owning, like there was a time where I was like, yeah, I did that. I do that. That's the kind of person.
That's who I am.
And then going into that part of myself. Mm-hmm. And it's not an overnight process. The rewiring of those beliefs and then the emotion and like finding out what the root cause of that is.
Yeah.
Because my behaviors around love and sex, similar to what you're talking about, aren't any different than reaching for another substance.
Totally.
Right. So there's a root cause of that and getting to that source.
Why are you reaching for these things? Whether it be alcohol, whether it be sex, whether it be shopping.
That's a full journey in layers because when these things, when you have an affair, there's just not, again, it's not for everyone, but depending on how that, if it comes out or not, like, are you dealing with shame? Are you dealing with, what are you dealing with? And like working through that. And it's just like getting lower and lower and lower into like where it's stemming from that caused it.
I want people to know that they can not identify as these things that they've done, right? That they're not forever scarred and branded as these things that we do in our lives. Right? That there is the freedom to explore and heal and then to step into different identities, right? In different seasons of our lives. Like I am not forever this person I might have walked through life being or got into relationships being.
Yeah.
And that is like this beautiful part of our journey and like our time here, because if we get stuck in those identities.
Yeah. It just perpetuates.
What happens if you spend the rest of your life living as, I'm a cheater, I'm a monster?
Yeah.
Well, what does that do for you or your family or anyone?
Nobody.
It's
not doing anything for
anybody.
Yeah.
And I think for anybody like that is tuning in or like listening or watching, like I hope, because I think it's a real thing happening for a lot of people that we're not talking about that are struggling with this, possibly having an affair, wanting to have an affair, having the thoughts of an affair, right? Tapping into what that is, or people who have had them, understanding that there is work to be done, that you don't have to live with this shame.
Right. Yeah. I don't believe that.
Like,
but I'm also a believer of just like, we're going to do bad things and we're allowed forgiveness. Like,
thank you.
And and having room to forgive others for things.
That right there is like a big part of, I think, where I'm at right now. I'm in a place of mine's forever. Ours are always forever changing, but like forgiving other people and people forgiving me. I think if I had to like close up this year for me, it would be just that.
Yeah.
It would just be forgiveness right now.
Yeah.
Like for the people I love that have hurt me and for myself and what I've done, right? Like I just am like, what does it do us any good to just hold all these like
that's
grudges against it? We're all,
it's so heavy in the body.
Too heavy.
It's too heavy. And the truth is like, we're all, those disconnects that are happening. My ex-husband hasn't talked to me since it's happened. So it's been, like I said, it's over 12 years. I get it. If there was an amends there that I could make, I would. I had to make it within myself.
Yes.
And I'm grateful that I have.
Yes.
So as far as like other people and like forgiveness, like being able to go to someone and own whatever part I've had in that, and be honest about it, and just, is there anything I can do to make this better? And I will not be that person again.
Yeah.
Like, so a living amends, like, because if someone's not going to accept an apology or won't ever talk to you about these things, like you still have an opportunity to change the behavior and not do those things anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And self-forgiveness is a big part of that.
Yep.
And but now I'm like my ex and I here, my ex-boyfriend who co-parents my kids with me, like if anything happens, like within minutes I can feel it. And I'm like,
your body.
Yeah. I'm like,
yeah.
Nope.
It's I'm
like, I had a total tone.
Yeah.
And I'm working
I'm
on
sorry.
that. I really am.
Yeah.
Like, everyone knows.
Yeah. I think it's the really beautiful thing about, I will say, getting older. I really love it. I'm really enjoying it. It's by far been the most beautiful, hardest season of my life, the last years of my 40s, right? But you just start to know those parts of you in a way you didn't when you were younger.
Thing you're talking about, like for me, it's like so much of it is ego.
It is.
Right. And so like, I'm just trying to die this death every day that I can.
Of this
like,
ego.
To shake this ego out of here.
Yes.
Like, it's the thing that gets me into the trouble to begin with. So it's like making apologies to others or calling myself out for things. The sooner I do that, the quicker there's just like that. I can just feel it. It's like, fuck.
Yeah.
I tried that. Didn't work.
Yeah, no, I mean, my nervous system, everything that I live in has been able to breathe when I've done like the breath work and the Joe and the EMDR. I mean, girl, I've been down the like rabbit hole of tools, right? That I never had before to do this. But like even living with my best friend, Jenny, and coexisting with her and co-parenting with her, I catch myself going to old behaviors and I immediately, it is the ego that challenges me where I go, I'm sorry. That was not cool. How I reacted, not you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not here to shake up the whole house and like be a disaster. That's old me. And that is really challenging, but it's really healing.
And it's the way that you rewire
it is behaviors. Rewiring the behaviors. It's like, I would identify that this is how Romi is. She throws a fit. She's loud. She's angry. She goes to bed. Fuck everybody.
Yeah.
And she's not that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That change can actually happen.
Yeah. And so a lot of the work I do is around that. I'm passionate about it. I want people to have an opportunity to know they can shift and change. I think what Joe puts out there is beautiful. Yeah. It's life-changing. It heals and saves and gives somebody like me another shot at my life.
Yeah. Do you think that you have to, like, in order for these changes to happen, like if there's awareness around like, okay, this behavior, I don't like it, it's not working, but it's deeply ingrained and you just keep repeating it. Do you find that you have to reach like a pain point to be like, I'm so sick of being sick and tired. Like, I'm so sick and tired of being sick and tired, or the pain of this is causing me like so much pain that the pain of changing won't hurt as much?
That's such a hard question, because I can't imagine somebody getting to that point without it hurting that bad.
Yeah.
Because the work around changing it is so hard.
Yeah, that's what I feel.
You know, that you almost have to get to a point where I'm either done. This is it. Like this is a very sad, dark place to exist in. Yeah. That I have no choice, because whatever I'm doing for me is not working, to literally try this quantum physics mind power shift in who I am. Yeah. And it was the only thing, with all the therapy I have done in my life and all the hospitalizations I have been through in my life and everything I have gone through, nothing worked for me until I got to that point and had to just say, you're going to have to shift how you think of yourself. Yeah. You're literally going to have to start meditating and shifting how you identify. Yeah. And it saved my life. Yeah. Because I was able to give myself an opportunity to not be her. Mm-hmm. And I had never known an existence in my life of not identifying as that monster. Yeah. Like, I didn't even know it was available to me. Yeah. And then when I did, I was like, I have to help somebody understand that they can do this. Mm-hmm. Like, I want other women to know we're not, like, we can change, like, we can identify and wake up and work on being somebody that we want to be. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That may not be how we were raised or how we looked or, you know, like, who we've been. Mm-hmm. Like, I can be whoever I want to be. Yeah.
It is pretty amazing.
It is.
But I do believe it's amazing, and it's also very painful.
Beyond.
Yeah, I was sort of visualizing the other day, like, you know, everyone's like, you know, you go through the metamorphosis, and then you like there's the caterpillar, and then you're a butterfly, and I'm like, there's like something that goes on in the middle, between and I don't know about you guys. I don't know what that is. But like, a part of me is like, I just imagine like you're stuck in this thing and it's claustrophobic, and you're just trying to get out. But it's got like there's got to be some sort of like uncomfortable, painful process within this cocooning thing that happens before you like ascend into your butterfly, because it's excruciating to overcome yourself. Like,
Jenny has been there with me through this over the last like few years watching, and she has held me in her arms in the most vulnerable crying position I could possibly be in, without alcohol numbing it, without drinking it away, feeling it, like almost like dying of pain through it over the last, it is like that, where you are stuck in like a cocoon, like just, you don't just break and then you're a butterfly. The process and the evolution of that is, and I think people are afraid of that part.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, the brain.
But what is your pain? Yeah? What is your option?
But
like
it is the instinct to not feel pain.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
It makes sense, but it really is the answer, and that is like with coaching the difficult part.
It is.
We can do a lot of questions and a lot of
Once we get there, though,
examination. But like once we arrive at the destination, like you have to like walk through the fire.
Yes. And I hit that place with my clients sometimes, and I see they know. Mm-hmm. They could touch. They see
what to do, but it's just not always.
They're not ready. Yeah, and there's only I can't push anyone through that. You can't push anyone through that. A therapist, a coach, nobody can make you want to feel that or go through that. You can help navigate the direction and the questions that help bring up what that might look like, or like the tools. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, all of us hit that point, and it's up to us.
Yeah, I thought about like doing like an unfucking midlife 3-step process to like how you would do that. And it's like, identify the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't pay anyone to fix that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Go change it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we know what to do.
You know what to do.
But it is so difficult. And it is like, I feel very grateful that I've had people that have, that I've worked with to guide and be a part of their transitions in life. I've had people hold space for me the same way. Same. So I respect and value like forms of therapy.
Totally.
And, all of that. But there is a part where it's like at the end of the day, there's not much I can do for you.
My therapist got there with me at some point. We had been doing it for like a few years together and working on hard stuff. And he was just like, I knew. Yeah. I knew. Yeah. And when we went in for like a deep dive, finally, I was like, I know. He's like, we're either going to like do this or we're going to keep going in circles around why we need to do it. Right. Yeah. And then with some of my clients as well, like, I think it's beautiful how we can hold space and be a part of that with people. Yeah. But ultimately, I think my biggest like takeaway from this as we come to an end here is like, these are real honest things that are happening. And the more we open up about them, I feel like it opens it up for somebody else. Yeah. Right. So I do think it's beautiful that you put yourself out there and you share your story to the degree that you do, right?
Thank you.
Because it does help people, right? Someone has to bring up things, right? So that we know that these things are happening, and also so that people can see what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
That's my biggest thing, is that like we can change. We cannot identify as those things anymore. They can be part of our stories that we share or talk about, but we're not living, breathing, walking around as that, right? And there's opportunity for growth and change and new like identities and lives that we create for ourselves. And those are constantly evolving.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no reason for people. I don't believe there's any reason. Like the less I can identify with daily, the better.
I love that.
Yeah. Like I really believe like being attached to an identity, to any of it is, the biggest one I struggle with is like, I feel very identified to my children as a mother. And that's something that I'm like, they're individuals. They're not mine.
Yes.
And that's
I say that all,
in my language all the time. It's like, oh, my kids, it's like, whoa.
They're not.
And so there's like areas in life where I look at it on a meta level, and I'm like, but in all things, like,
well, that's where when I do identity coaching too, and I'm glad you say that, it isn't about like, if you want to identify as like someone who's healthy, let's be that, right? If you want to identify as somebody who cares about these things, then let's step into that. That's kind of my whole like thing on it, is like, what do you want?
Yeah.
If you want to not identify as something, then let's move into that.
And that's the
that's
shift,
the
it's
shift.
Like, it's easy for us to sit around and think about the ways we don't want to be and the things that aren't working. And it's like, well, then what is it that you're desiring?
What do you want to wake up and feel?
And a lot of people don't know that answer.
Every single person I ask when we start coaching, I say, what do you identify as too? And they go, I don't know. Then we get into it and I go, what do you want to identify as? And that's where the work begins.
I wrote a column called Coming to Know What You Want. And it was this conversation because I was introduced one night. I was asked to speak with a group of women around sex. And I was like, what do you, all these different ages, what am I supposed to talk about that everyone would like resonate with? And the woman introduced me. She's like, this is Ashley Kell. She is a sexpert. And I was like, that is not how, that is not the intro. Like everyone was like, great. Like, we can't have that. Right. So I was like, oh my God.
That's not how I want to like identify.
No, I was like, okay, well, my name is Ashley Kell. Yeah. I was like, I'm not a sexpert, but I am an expert at having sex with myself, and I would like to talk about masturbation.
I do public speaking, and I'm with Loud Management. They wrote my description out recently for public speaking, and they did write something, and they were like, gender identity and this and this and this about me. And I read it, and I was like, no, this does not feel like I don't want to be put out there like that.
Like I have experience.
And I wrote immediately back, and it like didn't sit well. Where in past I would have been like, okay, well that's what I identify, and that's who I am. And I was like, no,
or they know best,
right? Like they know what I am supposed. And I immediately wrote back, and I was like, this cannot be the label, the identity of how I'm working with people, right? And so,
but it is great. Like people like you and I get to sit and have these, conversations and ask these questions. And I've had a lot of time to think about that. So like when it is that coming to know what you want, like in my work with women around when we're talking about business or dating and sex, it's like they're so here. Yeah. We're so up here all the time and we're not in our bodies.
No.
Able to feel like this is aligned with what I want. Yes. And we're not in our bodies sexually. And that's, that's a part of that wounding that's going on. So it is like an exploration of just like spending that time to find out what it is that you want and not spending all that time reeling about the things that you don't want.
You're supposed to be.
That you've done wrong. And it's easy for your brain to default there. So it is like that work.
Well, it's that weird line between like, this is my story, right? And then like creating your story.
Yeah.
That we get, like rewrite. Yeah. Like changing it.
I had a client who was like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I'm doing with this situation. And I was like, is there a person on TV? Is there a series that you watch where you see someone
that you want to
the way that they talk and they walk, you're just like, yeah, wow, that person's really got it.
Yeah.
And she was like, actually, and I was like,
that's what we're doing.
That's your script.
Yep.
So like whatever you
think she's doing, that's your story.
She would say.
That's how.
So you can't come up and be like, what would this person say?
Yes.
And that could be a person in your life.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter. Just have your brain. What would that person say? And then you
step into that.
Yeah.
That's everything that I'm working with women on right now. Like that right there. Yeah. As we come to an end, I want to thank you for all of this. Where can people find you, reach out to you, come to you for coaching? Like, please share.
Oh, amazing. I'm on Substack. It's where my column is. And I think this year in 2025, I'm going to be doing videos of like just live, like podcast videos. talking about midlife and how we're moving through it. And then I'm on Instagram at Ash Kelsch. Ash Kelsch.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say .com.
Your website?
But I'm sure it's ashleykelsch.com. I was like, but that sounds familiar.
That's yours.
Yeah, that's mine. Yeah, so it's all, and you can just Google my name. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's great. So
to me.
anyone can reach out. You know, she's got all her information out there. I'll put it as well under the description here. But thank you for letting me in on many levels.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking me to do this and all the work you're doing and sharing. It's amazing.
I love both of us doing this.
I love
it. So thank you.
Thank you.